remarks on this verse at Janmashtami. It's about Krishna's birth, but it's also about Sankirtan. It's about preaching, and so it's very relevant. Okay, you ready?
Can you repeat?
10 to 19. Sadevaki Savajagan Nivasa Nivasa Bhuta Nitanam Narechi Ojendra Gehe Nishike Varudha Saraswati Jana Kale Yatasati Sadevaki Savajagan Nivasa Nivasa Bhuta Nitaram Narechi Ojendra Gehe Nishike Varudha Saraswati Jana Kale Yatasati Sadevaki Savajagan Nivasa Nivasa Bhuta Nitaram Narechi Ojendra Gehe Nishike Varudha Saraswati Jana Kale Yatasati Sadevaki Savajagan Nivasa Nivasa Bhuta Nitaram Narechi Ojendra Gehe Nishike Saraswati Jana Kale Yatasati
Sadevaki Sarvajagan Nivasa
Sadevaki Savajagan Nivasa
Nivasa Bhuta Nitaram Nareche
Nivasa Bhuta Nitaram Narechi
Ojendra Gehe Nishike
Ojendra
Varudha
Gehe Nishike Varudha
Saraswati Jana Kale Yatasati
Saraswati Jana Kale Yatasati
Sadevaki Sarvajagan Nivasa
Sadevaki Savajagan Nivasa
Nivasa Bhuta Nitaram Nareche
Nivasa Bhuta Nitaram Narechi
Ojendra Gehe Nishike Varudha
Ojendra Gehe Nishike Varudha
Saraswati Jana Kale Yatasati
Saraswati Jana Kale Yatasati. Please. Sadevaki Savajagan Nivasa Nivasa Bhuta Nitaram Narechi Ojendra Gehe Nishike Varudha Saraswati Jana Kale Yatasati. Okay, word for word. Sadevaki That Devaki Sarva Jagat Nivasa of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sustainer of all the universes, Matstani Sarvabhutani. So that's an unusual translation. That's part of the translation. Srila Prabhupada sticks a little bit from the Bhagavad Gita there. Matstani Sarvabhutani. Nivasa Bhuta, the womb of Devaki has become the residence. Nitaram, extensively. No, not. Reji, became illuminated. Ojendra Gehe, within the limits of the house of Kamsa. Agni Shika Eva, like the flames of a fire. Rudha, covered. Saraswati, knowledge. Jnana Kale, in a person known as a Jnana Kala. One who possesses knowledge but cannot distribute it. So the penny drops, okay? That's why it's this verse. One who possesses knowledge but cannot distribute it. Yatha, or just as. Sati, so being. herself the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the foundation of the entire cosmos. But because she was under arrest in the house of Kamsa, she was like the flames of a fire covered by the walls of a pot, or like a person who has knowledge but cannot distribute it to the world for the benefit of human society. Please repeat. Devaki then kept within herself the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the foundation of the entire cosmos. But because she was under arrest in the house of Kamsa, she was like the flames of a fire, covered by the walls of a pot, or like a person who has knowledge, but cannot distribute it to the world for the benefit of human society. Purport. In this verse, the word jnana kala is most significant. Knowledge is meant for distribution. Although there is already much scientific knowledge, whenever scientists or philosophers awaken to a particular type of knowledge, they try to distribute it throughout the world, for otherwise the knowledge gradually dries up and no one benefits from it. India has the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, but unfortunately, for some reason or other, this sublime knowledge donations not without giving out books. Now one of my friends, he was a very prolific book distributor, so he had a little strategy. 2 weeks before the marathon started, he would do big, lots of long days on book distribution, and he'd withhold some of the money. So then during the marathon, he would do some collecting with cans, then he'd do straight book distribution, and then he'd pull out the money that he kept from before, so that he could do book distribution during the marathon and still give scores that were high enough that the temple president didn't figure out that he was out in book distribution. Anyway, there's some truth in medium of surrender. I mean, Srila Prabhupada, he had some of his disciples who were spending 18 hours a day on the streets in Japan, places like that, and they were collecting in order to fund the building of the Krishna Balaram Mandir. So there is some justification for it. But from the point of view of kirtan, what does kirtan mean? Kirtan means, or sankirtan, it means describing the glories of Krishna. Vyasake kirtane. Vyasake means Sukadeva Goswami. He became perfect from kirtan. But what was his kirtan? It wasn't chanting Hare Krishna, it was preaching Srimad Bhagavatam, Parikshit Shravane, and Parikshit heard it, therefore he became self-realized through hearing. So kirtan, so this people ask, is book distribution sankirtan? Remember, Ayendra Prabhu, he famously said, he got a letter, or the temple got a letter from Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, I'm so happy that you're doing the sankirtan and book distribution. And he had this realization, wait a minute, I thought book distribution was sankirtan. Then for him it meant, no, sankirtan means congregational chanting, book distribution is something else. Now there's some truth in that, but it's not the whole truth. For a start, Brihad Kirtan, our acharyas, they refer to book distribution as Brihat Kirtan or Brihat Madanga. So there's the word Kirtan. Now if you want to know what is the Yuga Dharma, well that's an interesting question. And I'll give you 2 verses from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and they have different meanings. One is Kali Yuge Yuga Dharma Namara Prachar. The Yuga Dharma is propagation of the holy name. Namara Prachar means to propagate the holy name. And the other verse is Kaliye Kalera Dharma Krishna Nama Sankirtan. The Yuga Dharma is Nam Sankirtan. Now Nam Sankirtan is different from book distribution because Kirtan has different categories. Nam Sankirtan means chanting the holy names. Now you can, if you describe Krishna's form, that's Rupa Kirtan. If you describe Krishna's qualities, that's Guna Kirtan. Describe Krishna's pastimes, Leela Kirtan. When you're out on book distribution, because you're talking about Krishna, you're engaged in Kirtan, but it's not Nam Kirtan, unless you've got an unusual way of distributing books. I mean, you might just have a book in your hand and just chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, and hope that someone takes the book. I mean, I've been on Harinams where a devotee was doing that and actually getting results, just holding the book and showing it and chanting Hare Krishna mantra. And some people take, It's an unusual way to do Kirtan. Anyway, so if you take both these meanings, then the Yuga Dharma, because the Yuga Dharma is Namara Prachar, and because book distribution is spreading the holy name, then the book distribution activity is the Yuga Dharma. And we can expand it even further. In the Vision 2020 document, there's a statement, it's all Sankirtan. So what do you think of that statement? Pramanava, is it all Sankirtan? What do you think? As in every service is Sankirtan? Yes, I agree with you. It is and it isn't. Oh, there's the mic. Tell me what you think. I'm asking you because I know you're gonna support book distribution. That's why I'm asking you.
It is facilitating distribution.
Yes.
Use it as an excuse also to not go out because you have a samosas.
Yes.
Is also Samosa Sankirtan.
Yes.
But it's not.
Exactly. So here's how I look at it. Deity worship, is it Sankirtan? Well, it depends who comes. If it's for the purposes of spreading Krishna consciousness, then it's Sankirtan. So if we have people going out distributing books and then they take people back to the temple, and then the people that come back to the temple, they see the deities and they fall in love with the deities, then the pujari is part of the Sankirtan mission because the pujaris helped bring these jivas to Krishna. But what happens if no one's going out on Sankirtan and no one comes to the temple? Then the pujaris aren't engaged in Sankirtan because it's not really propagating the holy name. They're just engaging in devotional service for their own benefit, you see. So the reason why everything is Sankirtan is because there's Sankirtan going on. So if we want everything in this temple to be Sankirtan, then there must be Sankirtan going on at the same time, that the preaching must be going on, and therefore everything, cleaning the temple, becomes part of the whole process of Sankirtan, you see. So myself and Premanava, we have a little proposal, and we're trying to get it ratified, that we have more book distribution, Harinam Sankirtan, at Bhaktivedanta Manor throughout the year. And I've thought about it, and I can't think of any good reason why we can't organise this. And I'll give you some of the reasons why someone might object. One person might say, we're too busy with other service. My response to that is, we have a huge property, therefore we just have a few extra people coming and staying here, and they can devote themselves to regular Sankirtan, or they can cover other people who can also do regular Sankirtan. That way everyone gets the chance to do regular Sankirtan. The Mataji's ashram, sometimes it's quite big. There's enough people that the Mataji's can go out on regular Harinam and book distribution. And I used to go out on Thursday Harinam with several of the Mataji's every Thursday. But sometimes the ashram gets a little small and it's difficult to cover all the services. But my point is, because this temple is so big and there's so many rooms, it must be possible to have a few extra people staying here all the time. Therefore, we can have Sankirtan throughout the year. So I'm just hoping, does anyone disagree with this? Is this a good idea or not? Put your hand up if you think it's a bad idea. Okay? Put your hand up if you think it's a good idea. Do we have Oh, almost everyone. That's great. So everyone agrees it's a good idea, pretty much. Therefore, we just have to do it, right? Isn't it? If we have an obstacle, the obstacle is, well, it's a good idea, therefore there's no excuse to not do it, we just have to do it. And we'll find a way to do it. And it needs to be a team effort. I can't do it by myself because no one's going to go out in book distribution because I tell them to, because they're going to say, well, you don't go out in book distribution. And I say, well, I kind of do, but not really. But I can take people out in Harinam Sankirtan. But Pramanava can tell them to do book distribution and they'll listen to him because he actually does it. Because you have to practice what you preach. And if you don't, you have no empowerment. So that's my plug. So I'm glad everyone agrees, and I'm going to tell the authorities that I asked everyone at the Bhagavatam class, and it was almost unanimous that everyone agreed it's a good idea, and no one said it was a bad idea. So that's a little extra reason, or hopefully we'll be successful in implementing this. Anyway, so going back, we were discussing the meaning of Sankirtan, and so Nam Sankirtan means congregational chanting, and book distribution is also considered the Yuga Dharma because it's Namara Prachar. So I'm going to bring some quotes that I was inspired to share with you on different topics. This is from Prabhupada Memories. And this is Shama Sundar talking, and I've not got a quote here, but this is roughly what he said. He goes, in the beginning we took a risk for Krishna. And Prabhupada said, if you take a risk for Krishna, Krishna's obliged to make you successful. So at that time, they would take all kinds of risks for Krishna. And he gives them one example. They had no money, and one time they were walking down the street, and then suddenly all these, I think it was $50 bills, just started floating down from some skyscraper building. And you don't know what it was. I mean, what was that all about? So they were just grabbing all this money from the street. So the point was they were engaged in spreading Krishna consciousness, but they had no money, but Krishna provided, you see. So Shama Sundar Prabhu, he says very sagaciously or very important, significantly, he says, this spirit has died down. Yeah? And he actually said, we got to see Krishna. He didn't explain what that meant. Did he have a vision of Krishna? Did he feel Krishna? Narad Muni, when he had darshan of Krishna, what did he do afterwards? He just engaged in Krishna consciousness, and Prabhupada in the purport, is in the first canto, says, engaging in Sankirtan is the same as seeing Krishna. If we actually engage in Sankirtan, that's the same as seeing Krishna. So we will see Krishna either that way, or we'll actually get a vision of Krishna. So Shama Sundar Prabhu says that spirit has died down. So we always have this struggle. We have to always get that sweet spirit, Sankirtan spirit, you know. So Sankirtan, devotional service can be carried out under the different modes of nature. So if you do the Prabhupada Marathon, this is Krishna consciousness in the mode of goodness, or if you're even more advanced, it's transcendental. So why is it in the mode of goodness? What are the symptoms of happiness in the mode of goodness? It's like poison in the beginning, nectar in the end. So before a Prabhupada Marathon, you get anxious. it's an austerity. And during the marathon, you get anxious, you wake up, you don't get enough sleep, you get cold, it's austere, so it's poison. But there's some nectar coming at the same time, you see. What's the alternative? You don't take part in that event, you don't do the yajna, and you maybe stay at the temple and get the Mahaprasadam. So that's nectar. That's nectar in the beginning. But at the end of that month, you're feeling really bad because everyone else is ecstatic and you didn't get the same ecstasy and you feel bad. So that's happiness in the mode of passion. It's nectar in the beginning, poison in the end, you see. So we should opt for austerity, which is poison in the beginning, nectar in the end. And that's happiness in the mode of goodness. And in the case of Krishna consciousness, it's transcendental. So where does the Sankirtan movement appear in Lord Chaitanya's Leela? Well, we have Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur going door to door. But what is the meaning of the Sankirtan mission? What are we distributing? So here's some verses from Adi Leela, chapter 7, text 20. I'll read several verses. The characteristics of Krishna are understood to be a storehouse of transcendental love. Although that storehouse of love certainly came with Krishna when he was present, it was sealed. But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came with his associates of the Panchatattva, they broke the seal and plundered the storehouse to taste transcendental love of Krishna. The more they tasted it, the more their thirst for it grew. Next verse. Sri Panchatattva themselves danced again and again, and thus made it easier to drink nectarian love of Godhead. They danced, cried, laughed, and chanted like madmen. And in this way, they distributed love of Godhead. Next verse. In distributing love of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates did not consider who was a fit candidate and who was not where such distribution should or should not take place. They made no conditions. Wherever they got the opportunity, the members of the Panchatattva distributed love of Godhead. Although the members of the Panchatattva plundered the storehouse of love of Godhead and ate and distributed its contents, there was no scarcity, for this wonderful storehouse is so complete that as the love is distributed, the supply increases hundreds of times. So this last verse is very significant. The more you distribute it, the more the supply comes. So today's verse in the Bhagavatam had the phrase Jnana Kala. Anyone remember that phrase? What does it mean? Jnana Kala. It means one has knowledge but cannot distribute it. So the secret for us to become advanced spiritually, for us to get spiritual knowledge, the secret is we have to distribute it. That is the qualification. If we don't distribute it, we don't have the qualification to receive it. So there's a phrase, Atmaha, which means killer of the soul. So it can mean a meat eater. It can also mean someone who does not give spiritual knowledge. It has this double meaning, Atmaha. And the fourth verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Nivritatar Shaya Rupagiya Manad Bhavaushidats Chotram Manobiramat Ka Uttama Shloka Gunanavada Pumam Birajeta Bina Pashugnat. Who will not listen to the beautiful pastimes of Krishna except for Pashugnat, a killer of the soul? These pastimes are especially for the Nivritatar Shaya, those who have given up material enjoyment, and they take this knowledge as Bhavaushidats Chotram Mano Biramat. It's the medicine for killing the material disease. Bhava Aushadats. Aushadi means a herb. So Bhavaushadats Chotram Mano Biramat. By hearing this spiritual knowledge, our material propensity is vanquished. So this verse is very significant because it tells us how we can taste the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam. We have to become Pashugnat. Now, Pashu generally means animal, but I read one purport. I heard one class where Prabhupada said Pashu means the soul. So Pashugnat also means killer of the soul, or someone who does not give spiritual knowledge to themselves and to others. Now, we have 4 regulative principles. One of them is no meat eating. In the Gaudiya Mat, the 4 pillars were described slightly differently, and the pillar of no meat eating was described as it was not being a killer of the soul, and the explanation was given. It means to always give Krishna consciousness and under all circumstances. So if we neglect to give Krishna consciousness to another person, we are Atmaha, or killer of the soul, and that is one of the regulative principles that the Gaudiya Mat described as. No, we call it no meat eating. They say no meat eating and no preaching, you see. So I sometimes wish Prabhupada had actually included that in the vows. Because imagine we'd all have vowed we have to always spread Krishna consciousness. It's part of our vow, 24 hours a day. Of course, we're sleeping, we don't do it. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Shri Sita Ram Lakshman Hanumana ki jai, Shri Shri Gaurnitai ki jai. So it's said that Kamsa, if you remember the purport, Kamsa tried to arrest Krishna consciousness in his house, and as a result he was vanquished. So that Prabhupada said there is nothing can stop this Sankirtan movement. There are no obstacles. Any obstacle is just a figment of our imagination. In the early days, the devotees would do Sankirtan and get arrested, and then they would go to court, and then they go to prison, or sometimes they go to court, but somehow or other everything always worked out. There's one example, Tribhuvannath Prabhu, he had so many, he was arrested so many times, and he went before the judge, and he just spoke his real reason. I'm there to give Krishna consciousness, I'm serving my spiritual master, etc., etc. And the judge said, this man is very noble, he's doing some great work, and he got let off. So all the fines that he had, the judge just threw them away, you see. So if we always take shelter of Krishna, then we will always be protected under all circumstances. So I'm going to read you some quotes about book distribution. Here's a letter to Rupanuga, 9th of October 1974. Book distribution is also chanting. These books I have recorded and chanted, and they are transcribed. It is spoken kirtans. So book distribution is also chanting. These are not ordinary books. It is recorded chanting. Anyone who reads, he is hearing. Book distribution must not be neglected. Here's a letter to Shrutadev, 24th of October 1974. So I am always emphasizing book distribution. It is the better kirtan. It is better than chanting. Of course, chanting should not be stopped, but book distribution is the best kirtan. Remember that chanting should not be stopped. Generally, in the old days, the good old days, book distribution and Harinam Sankirtan were side by side. And one time they wrote to Prabhupada and said, the local authorities are giving us problems by chanting. Is it okay to do book distribution by itself? And I found that letter very interesting because they should actually ask permission to not engage in Hare Krishna, in Nam Sankirtan at the same time as book distribution. And Prabhupada's reply was, yes, it's good because it's also kirtan. Here's Gopa Brindapal, Prabhupada disciple, prolific book distributor. And here's what he said. I said something about, when we distribute your books, Prabhupada, he stopped me and said, do you know what book distribution means? I wanted to think of something quickly to save my skin, but I couldn't. So I said, actually, I don't know that there is a lot of, I know that there is a lot of depth to it and things about it that I don't understand. He turned to me, that's Prabhupada. Prabhupada turned to me with a strong glance and said, book distribution means distribution of knowledge. It's very important, we have to understand. Distribution of knowledge. It's not about book scores. It's not about collecting a bit of money. It's about distribution of knowledge. Prabhupada goes on, do not forget this. It wasn't a sales thing. He didn't look at the distribution of his books as something that would be done with a sales mentality, but rather with the mentality that we were giving knowledge to people who needed it. Here's another pastime. Prabhupada pulled out the Bhagavatam and slowly and carefully read the verse. This Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun. He said, this verse is so wonderful. If you just tell people this verse, how can they resist? You don't need to say anything. The Srimad Bhagavatam will sell itself. And one time, some of the temple devotees asked, you say that the managers should be shy, but then you send them out on book distribution, and they have to be interacting. And Prabhupada said, we can be a lion on the chase and a lamb at home. And here's a quote from Rameshwar, also from Prabhupada Memories. We asked Prabhupada very specifically if the book distribution created some kind of subtle spiritual atmosphere in the world. Because even though we gave out millions of books, millions of people were not joining from taking those books. Prabhupada said that is exactly what it was. The benefit of taking these books and hearing in public the chanting of the holy names on Harinam Sankirtan was and is creating and will create a spiritual environment that will awaken souls, whatever their denomination. This was the powerful realization that Prabhupada shared with us about book distribution. So that's a wonderful confirmation of Srila Prabhupada that the whole spiritual atmosphere is changing just by distributing Prabhupada's books. Now previously I read this statement where Prabhupada said, books are recorded chanting. So this is very significant because on one occasion, in one conversation, Prabhupada said, you should hear from the pure devotee. And he said, but even if you hear yourself, you can become self-realized. Because sometimes people have a philosophy that you can't become self-realized from the books. And they say you have to hear from the lips of the pure devotee, and the books are not the same, therefore the potency is not in the book. Now, my understanding, I've researched this, my understanding is, it is indeed the case that there is more potency from hearing from the lips of the pure devotee. But Prabhupada never said that the books themselves don't have the potency for us to become self-realized. And there are a number of quotes where he actually says that. He actually says, it is recorded chanting. He says, even if the person is not present, the sound vibration is still there with the books. So when we read Prabhupada's books, we can actually have the realization that Prabhupada is actually directly talking with us. And some people have that. When they read Prabhupada books, they've had the experience that it felt like Prabhupada was actually speaking to them, the books, you see. So there's something, as Gopa Brindapal said, there's something very deep that I don't understand about it. But that is the depth of this book distribution. If we understand the depth of Srila Prabhupada's books, how they are actually recorded chanting, how by reading it, we're actually entering into the spiritual world, we can actually access Krishna's pastimes. If we actually understand the spiritual nature of those books, then of course we will have the desire to distribute it. So that verse I quoted from the 10th canto, Nivritata Sharupagiya Marad Bhavaushidats Chotramanobirat Kamutama Shloka Gunana Vadad Pumambi Rajeta Bina Pashugnat. We should understand that the whole way that we can advance in Krishna consciousness is to give it to others. Why did we come to Krishna? Because of someone else's effort. I came to Krishna through receiving Prabhupada's books. I didn't see any Harinam Sankirtan. I didn't see any temple. I never knew there existed a temple. I never went to a Namhat. For about 3 years, I just picked up books in Edinburgh on the street from Sankirtan devotees. And Krishna, I later on discovered, the experiences I had were like, they felt like they were mystical experiences. And I later discovered that the devotees that were on the street, some of them actually weren't, by normal judgment, very advanced. Some of them had actual spiritual problems. One of them, he was out of prison, and his spiritual master had told him, the only reason I gave you initiation is because I wanted you to distribute Prabhupada's books. Didn't think he was actually really qualified for initiation. But I took a book from him, and I was waiting. He was talking to someone on Princess Street, which is the main street of Edinburgh, and I was fascinated because there he was with a shaved head and a shika, and I was thinking, that's really weird. It's just, ugh. But at the same time, I was very attracted. What is this person all about? And he was talking to someone, so I waited. And then when he finished, I came up to him, and he pointed to me. And he said, you're not this body. And when he pointed to me, my heart started beating. I got palpitations. And I was like, this is empowered. There's some empowerment going on here. I didn't really understand what it was. But how could someone, just by pointing at me, they could make my heart start beating really fast? I could feel it. And at that time, I was sick. I'd had a bad experience. I went to university, dropped out of university. I was just confused. I was a spiritual seeker, but I had a real bad experience. My life was falling apart. And I was suffering like anything. And my heart was like really hard as a rock. So when he pointed to me, I felt, I feel like there's life coming to me here. On another occasion, actually the first time I ever met a devotee, the first time I ever heard the word Krishna, I was 19 years old, and it was from a book that I got from this devotee. It was actually Yuga. Some of you may know him from Scotland, although he's originally from Holland or Amsterdam or something. Anyway, he just saw me and he said, I've got some books for you. And I was thinking, what is this all about? And I looked into his eyes, and I swear his eyes were like orange, shiny orange on the inside, and I couldn't figure it out. I mean, I've known him for years now, and his eyes are never like that. But for some reason, someone was playing tricks on me, and I looked into his eyes, and they were like bright orange. And about 2 days later, I went to the library, and I went to the philosophy section, and there was one of Prabhupada's books, Nectar of Devotion. And I picked it up and opened it up at a random page, and it said, one of the symptoms of love of Godhead is that the color of your eyes changes. And I started thinking, he must have love of Godhead. I mean, I since reassessed my judgment on that. So anyway, but why we have these experiences? Because Krishna's acting. But the importance of sadhu sangha. This is the importance of sadhu sangha. I had about 14 books by the time I went to the first Namhat. Actually, it was Yuga was at the Namhat, and he said, why are you here? And I said, I've got some books. Oh, really? What books do you have? And I said, I got about 14 of them, and his jaw dropped. He couldn't understand how someone could have 14 books. I said, but if the people are going on the street every day, and I meet them, I'm just going to pick up these books. But I never even knew about japa. I was just reading the books, and I was looking at the pictures of these four-armed forms with blue complexion, and I was thinking, this is really wild, because I was into Buddhism at the time. But I was just very much attracted to these books. But the thing is, it doesn't come together unless you actually meet someone who tells you what you should do. Or you need to chant, you need to do this, you need to offer your food. And then it all came together. But it doesn't always not come together. Keshava Maharaj has the famous example. He missed his Sankirtan spot and went to some other place by mistake. But it was Krishna's arrangement, because he met someone who had chanted Be Happy. And by reading that book, he'd made his own beads, and he was chanting regularly. Was he chanting how many rounds? 16? So there you go. You can, just from getting a book, you can like pick up the process, and you can make your own beads, and you can chant 16 rounds. So it is possible just from the books. But generally speaking, we have to have the sadhu sangha. Therefore, book distribution isn't just about distributing a book. Kripa Mahaprabhu, he's got a nice analysis of book distribution, and he says, it's like, we have this mood, it's like we're going out to conquer people, and then he beats his chest. And it's all about how many books we distribute. But that's not what book distribution is all about. You have to follow up, you have to carry them on their path of devotion, and you have to take them to the temple, and it's a whole cultivation thing, because you can just go out there and distribute lots of books and think, yeah, great, I've done this, so many books, but then you don't follow up. So the whole process, it's a path of devotion. Now, Kandadri Prabhu, he's done a lot of analysis on this. So in January, he's going to start some workshops to follow up on the path of devotion. Because what we want to do is streamline Bhaktivedanta Manor so that however anyone comes to Krishna consciousness, we can pick them from where they are at and take them on a path so that we don't drop them. And then we can take them all the way to the point of chanting 16 rounds, taking initiation, engaging in Krishna consciousness in so many ways, you see. That's the path of devotion. So book distribution that's what it is. It's part of that path of devotion. And we have to be very mature about it. And sometimes it means our book score might go down. There's always a temptation. You're on a marathon, you want to get as many books out, get some points and get up the scoreboard. But sometimes you should take an opportunity. If you're in the mode of goodness, you think, well, the right thing to do in this situation is to actually talk to this person a bit longer, to help this person come to Krishna consciousness. And it may not result in more book scores, but you've done the right thing. And that's what's pleasing to Krishna, and ultimately that's our business, to please Krishna, you see. So sometimes it's not about scores, but it's about quality, the way you do things. And I'll just conclude with a little story which I've told before, because I was tricky. So when I was a Bhakta Graham, I was in Australasia, and it was 1996, which was the centennial year, Prabhupada's birth. So we had it was a special book distribution marathon for Christmas. And I was in the ashram in Auckland, and Devanira Swami was there. He'd recently opened up an ashram. So I was doing the marathon. So I found a way how to win the marathon, and it was kind of cheating, but it wasn't really cheating. It was the rules. So what I did was, I would make sweet balls. I would go out and sell sweet balls, maybe twice a week. And then I'd use the money to buy these little booklets. There was the Prabhupada Centennial booklets. Because what I did a calculation. I said, well, if I buy a box of 1,000 booklets, that costs so much. And if I distribute them, I'll get so many book points. And it'll be the equivalent to distributing 100 Bhagavad Gitas. So what I did was, I'd be doing, in terms of book points, I would just go out and distribute these flyers. And it was really easy, booklets. I didn't have to convince anyone to give me any money. And I just used to distribute lots of them. And then I'd come back with the same number of book points as someone who distributed 100 Bhagavad Gitas. So eventually, after 1 month, there's all these book distributors that were way, way better than me. They were more empowered at distributing books. But because I used this little tricky method, I managed to win the marathon. So I got a mixed reception for that. Devan Swami, he said he was proud of me for what I'd done. But there was another sannyasi, Chandrasekhar Maharaj, and he said to me, I hope the next time you can distribute Prabhupada's literature in a way that's more pleasing to him, because he noticed that a lot of what I distributed ended up in the bin. Because, you distribute in mass distribution, and people just throw them away. Which is a dilemma. And Prabhupada said, we take that risk. I mean, there's pros and cons to that. He did say, we take the risk. We understand that by distributing, someone might not appreciate and throw away. He said, we don't want this to happen, but we take that risk. And in the Bhagavad Gita, there's this famous verse, we do not teach Krishna consciousness to those who are not steer, those who are not envious, etc. So then the question is, why then do we spread Krishna consciousness to everyone? We don't discriminate. But Prabhupada said it's a risk we take, because we know that there will be innocent people who will hear, and for their sake, we take the risk of offending or aggravating envious people. And there's a name for an envious person. It's Kala. Sarpa Krura, Kala Krura. Sarpat Krura Tara Kala. Mantraushadi Bashi Mantra Kala Kena Nivaryati. There's a famous verse that says, the snake and an envious person are very dangerous. But of the two, the envious person is harder to tame than the snake. Through mantra or through herb, you can tame a snake, but you cannot tame an envious person. So the word for an envious person is kala. So today's verse, the term jnana kala, it can be interpreted as someone who's envious because they have knowledge and they don't want to distribute. So I'll leave you with one little analogy. If you've got a flowing river, the water's fresh. But if you have a little alcove and the water doesn't move, it stagnates, you see. So we have to always be giving, and if we give, then we receive, we get realizations. So ultimately, book distribution is not just about giving education, it is also education in itself. Because Prabhupada's definition of education, well, Prahlad Maharaj's definition of education, tan manyeditam uttamam, the highest education is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, etc., the 9 processes. That's the highest education. Therefore, distributing Prabhupada's books is itself the highest education for us, if we do it. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So thank you very much for tolerating me, and I've run over a little bit, but I've got maybe a few minutes if anyone wants to make any comments or questions or corrections. Thank you. Vishwambar Prabhu.
Thanks, Govinda. The analogy came to mind. Prabhupada gives that analogy of the cow. If it doesn't give milk, then the cow gets sick.
Okay.
But by giving milk, it generates more milk.
Thank you.
So Prabhupada says a spiritualist is like that. If he gives knowledge, then he generates more knowledge. But if he has a knowledge and he doesn't give it out, then he's doomed to forget everything, and he gets sick spiritually.
Thank you.
That's something that always stayed with me. It's in the Bhagavata.
Yes, it's a wonderful analogy. Yes, and this Prabhupada said it's a razor's edge, this Krishna consciousness. But if we get up early in the morning, we have very good sadhana, we distribute Prabhupada's books and we read them, then when we read them, we get wonderful realizations that we wouldn't get if we didn't follow that lifestyle. So we have to be very strict and distribute, and then we'll get the realization ourselves.
Hare Krishna, Govinda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu is more like an observation of like 50, 60 years of the Hare Krishna movement, where I hear from senior devotees like yourself. We hear so many stories that in terms of book distribution, everyone finds it, not everyone, sorry, most people find it difficult, but there's so much more support nowadays from devotees like yourself, and there's so many things that we can do, different ways of book distribution. And I remember the times when like we used to do book distribution to try and get more Lakshmi for the temple, for maintaining the temple. Like that's there now, but not as much as how it was before. So there's not that much pressure in terms of just trying to get Lakshmi. It's more about just giving the knowledge, and that's much more easier than trying to worry about giving the knowledge and trying to get the Lakshmi and trying to get so on and so forth. So it's really nice. I'm just very appreciative of devotees like yourself who make it just make it a bit easier for us to do book distribution, because we're not, like I'm not a book distributor, but I try my best, and it's only because of devotees like yourself and seniors that encourage us to do more for Srila Prabhupada. So yeah, just observation. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you very much. And my feeling is I'm not personally doing much to help others with book distribution. I do sponsor books, but my feeling is the book distributors, they are helping the Harinam Sankirtan. When they come on the Harinam Sankirtan, it just adds an extra bit of bliss, an extra dimension there. And we go as a team, and it's not easy because Harinam Sankirtan's moving. We're moving, so if we're moving, we have to move at the right pace so that the book distributor doesn't get left behind. But we manage to do it. But my feeling is it's like a synergy. The book distribution and the Harinam Sankirtan, and we do sad distribution all at the same time, then it just really creates a lovely team atmosphere. And that's a wonderful type of Sankirtan that we should always continue doing. And of course there's other type of Sankirtan where a book distributor can be on his own and maybe in disguise, and that's another wonderful way to do it. But yeah, but thank you for that. That's a nice observation. Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for the nice class, Prabhu. I just had a quick question. Like when I'm on book distribution, quite a few times I experienced that people, they maybe took the books in the past already, but they kind of either didn't start reading the books, or they didn't have kind of the motivation to read the whole book. And that was one of the reasons as well why I started to do like online songs and trying to stay in touch with them. But I feel like that, as you were mentioning as well, I think in those few minutes which we have with the people on the street, I feel we really need to try to kind of bring about a need within them, and like a really strong motivation to actually read the books. So I was just curious on your thoughts on how can we really try to talk to them in a way that we can really bring about this internal motivation, and the need that, okay, I really need to read those books, that's going to help me.
I think there's several book distributors in this class who are far more experienced at that, and I think one of them should answer that question, even Vishram Bar or Pramanava, Keshava Maharaj. How do you actually, you've got a few minutes, how do you actually create that feeling inside the person?
I think nowadays we have all these initiatives, like we have a retreat after this marathon, we have online things they can log on to. For me, I find the most important thing is the relationship between you and them. So ultimately, one distributor was making a statistic that 90% of the time they're buying the book not because they're really that interested in the book, but just because they like you. So that seems to be the main motivating factor that's going to drive them to read the book, is they bought the book because they like you. So they're likely to read the book because they like you. So it really means it's that personal interaction, and that's the point Govinda Prabhu was making, that ultimately it only comes together when there's a devotee involved. Bhagavat Sangi Sangasya is the most powerful. So
Thank you. Leave a good impression.
Yeah. Yeah, what do you do? So how do you encourage people to read the books? That's why it's important for us to be out. And when they, even though they may not take a book, you're there reminding them to read the book they've already got. I mean, other than that, there's not a lot you can do. But you're there. The devotees are there. We're making a statement. We're not in the public as much as we used to be. And some devotees say, well, things have changed, times change. But I don't think the way we do Sankirtan should really change. It should expand. But Prabhupada said, if you try something new, but you stop the old thing you're already doing, then what's the point of that? I mean, to continue what you're doing, and then you have more devotees, then you try something new, but you continue what's already been done in the past. Then that's expansion. So yeah, we need to be out there more. And then the people see us, then we just say to them, well, yeah, read the book.
Yeah. But I think if you've got regular Sankirtan throughout the year, then you have these blissful devotees coming back every night from Sankirtan. They've got effulgent faces and they've got these lovely stories to tell, and it just totally lifts up the whole atmosphere of the temple. So that's the thing, we have to try and create a temple like that, and it's a razor's edge. We have to be austere, dedicated, and we can carve out a space where we have regular sacred Sankirtan, which won't be interfered with by any other activities, because there's always a strain on resources. But that's really what we need to do, yeah. Keshava Maharaj.
I just had a quick conspiracy theory. Whether you believe it or not, I think it has a lesson in it. So I'll say the conspiracy theory. So there is this theory out there that basically there's a paper shortage in the world. It seems it's becoming harder and harder to distribute books. And, with the environment, there's a growing kind of thing amongst in the world that, we should be printing less because, there's not enough trees and all that.
Okay. Yeah.
So the conspiracy theory is that this is actually fueled by the government, because what they want to do is they want all books to be electronic, like move all books to e-books and don't have any printed books. And the conspiracy theory is that once you move everything to e-books, if the government ever wants to take something out of circulation, you can just take it out. Basically, you can then begin controlling what everyone reads, because it's all electronic information now. So that's the conspiracy theory. But the interesting thing I was thinking is that whether that's true or not, if that would be true, then printed books in the future would be like gold dust. Like people would be like just running to find a printed book, because where can you get a printed book now? And perhaps if that conspiracy theory is true, that may be one of the reasons why Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas emphasize pumping out as many books as possible. But the lesson I think from it is that whether that's true or not, there's the fact that Srila Prabhupada was so emphatic to distribute books, physical books, even though sometimes it may feel like it doesn't make sense, the world has moved on. There may be factors in the future that we're just totally not aware of that will justify why that so much emphasis was placed on that. So even when it sometimes feels like we're doing so much, we're giving out so much, and we can't see the beginning and the end of it, there is a power to the words of the Acharya.
Thank you. Cool. If anyone needs to leave, we've gone over, but carry on.
Thank you so much. So my question is, I really enjoyed hearing this urgency to actually propagate the books. And I heard this from Mother Vishaka a few days ago. I asked her, why is it that Prabhupada didn't want us to think about how did we end up here in this conditioned state? And her answer was that Prabhupada equates this with like, it's not exactly her example, but it's the same example of the burning house. Like if you're trying to get out, you don't question how did you come here. So I'd like to just hear from everyone, like why is it so important right now in this day and age to actually read this, and in terms of in their lives, because I'm just seeking some inspiration as to what to tell people, because normally I just go and say, I just relate with them, and then I say something that pertains to me that I feel like they would understand. But I just it never came to me, why is it so important actually right now?
Mm-hmm.
On a heightened state.
It's not only is it important actually now, it's our only business all time in the past, all in the future. Our only business is to connect with Krishna, because that's our ultimate nature, right? It's the Jaiva Dharma, or the Paradharma, is we're ultimately servants of Krishna. And these books are helping us connect to Krishna. They're helping us to become self-realize, realize who we actually are. So, what is book distribution for me? For me, it means, one time Prabhupada was on a walk and he pointed to some grass that had dried up and died. And he said, why is it dried up? Why is it dead, this grass? And the answer, people gave so many answers. And Prabhupada said, because it's disconnected from the root. So in the same way, when we disconnect from Krishna, we die. Spiritually, we die. So we're reconnecting people to the root. So that's what this book distribution is. So it's just so important, because it's who we actually are. It's just finding our real nature. Vishnu Prabhu.
If you lost going somewhere, then people usually put a GPS on, isn't it? Would you or not? So these books, they're the only map, that they can guide people out of this ocean of birth, death, old age, and disease. There is no other map. That's why there is urgency. If people are reading these books, they find their way out of this miserable life. And things they get, why there is urgency? Because things are getting worse and worse and worse by the day. And just put on the news and you'll see, everything is getting hot. The cost of living higher, people committing suicide, wars everywhere. Anyway,
I know.
that's
Thank you.
why we need to invite people to achieve freedom.
Thank you. Priyat Madanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi.